If you've been diving into VV Ultimatum lately, you've probably realized that building a strong character isn't just about your weapon, skills, or race. Spirit charms play a huge role in shaping your build, and with so many different options available, figuring out which ones are actually worth using can get pretty confusing. Some charms can completely change the way you fight, while others offer smaller bonuses that only shine in specific situations. So, in today's VV Ultimatum Spirit Charms tier list, we're going to break down every major spirit charm currently available and talk about which ones deserve a spot in your build. Whether you're focused on PvP, grinding PvE content, or just looking to create the strongest character possible, this guide will help you understand which charms are worth investing in and which ones you can safely skip. Let's get started. I'm quickly moving on to the video and I'm ranking spirit charms in VV Ultimatum. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching. The spirit charms in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right: at the ready, battle hardened, critical blows, defensive regen, domination, flashmaster, fortified fighter, giant fighter, headhunter, prey turned predator, and trouble in paradise. Let's go through the C tier spirit charms in VV Ultimatum and talk about what they actually bring to the table, because this tier is basically full of situational value or niche usefulness kind of picks. First up is at the ready. This one gives you a permanent 25% ability haste when you get invaded. On paper, that sounds pretty strong, but the catch is obvious. It only activates in a very specific scenario, so most of the time it is just sitting there doing nothing. Still, when an invasion does happen, that extra haste can actually make your defensive fight feel a lot smoother and more responsive. Then we have Battle Hardened, and honestly, this one is more of a visual flex than a combat tool. It makes your character visually bleed when you are at lower health. That is basically it. It does not really give you an advantage in fights, but if you like your character looking more intense during clutch moments, it does add some flavor. Critical blows is much more straightforward. It gives you a flat 7.5% increased critical attack damage. No conditions, no weird requirements. It is just a simple damage boost, which makes it pretty easy to slot into crit-focused builds. It is not flashy, but it is reliable. Now, defensive regen is where things get a bit more complicated. You regenerate 25% more Reiatsu from parries, which is great if you are good at timing your parries consistently, but the downside is heavy since your base Reiatsu regeneration is reduced by 35%, so if you are not actively parrying, you are basically hurting yourself. Domination is a clean stat charm. It increases your maximum action points by 0.15 times. No gimmicks, no conditions, just a higher ceiling for your resources. If you are a player who avoids damage and likes to maintain pressure, this extra buffer can actually matter more than it looks. Flashmaster is one of those quality of life mobility charms. It gives you 7.5 extra Shunpo stamina. It might not sound like much, but in actual combat, it means more dashes for chasing, escaping, and repositioning. Sometimes those small mobility advantages decide fights. Fortified Fighter is basically a comeback insurance charm. When your posture breaks, you gain 15% extra defense. You do not want to rely on getting posture broken in the first place, but if it happens, this helps you survive the punish window and maybe recover. Giant Fighter is very straightforward, but situational. You deal 10% more damage to bosses, but you also deal 2.5% less damage to non-boss enemies. So it is clearly designed for boss farming. If you are grinding bosses, it is great. If you are clearing normal mobs, it becomes inefficient. Headhunter is a PvP-focused niche charm. You deal 5% more damage to players who are using a transformation or Shikai while you are not. It is basically an underdog mechanic. It will not always be active, but when it is, it helps you close the gap against stronger looking opponents. Prey turned predator is more of a mission protection tool. If someone invades you while you are on a mission, they get combat tagged. It does not directly boost your damage or stats, but it discourages or punishes players who try to interrupt your objectives. Very situational, but useful if you hate getting interrupted mid-grind. Finally, Trouble in Paradise gives you 10% more damage in Hollowworld. Simple idea, strong effect, but only in a specific location. So if you are actually fighting there, it is great value, but outside of that, it is basically inactive. So overall, C tier is full of charms that are either condition-based, location-based, or just small stat boosts. None of them are game-breaking on their own, but in the right scenario, a few of them can definitely feel stronger than you would expect. The spirit charms in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right: Backline Buster, Close and Personal, Factotum Spirit, Frostwalker, Frugal, Indomitable Spirit, Lizard Spirit, Mysterious Stranger Her, Mysterious Stranger Him, Perfect Flash, Ranged Warrior, Relentless Hunter, Side Character, Silent Shadows, Superiority Complex, Surgeon Spirit, Swarm, Tools of the Trade, and Wraith's Spirit. Backline Buster is a really interesting group fight oriented charm that rewards smart target switching. The idea of hitting one opponent and then quickly swapping to another to trigger Perfect Flash creates a rhythm where you are constantly bouncing pressure instead of tunneling one target. In chaotic fights, this can feel very strong, especially when enemies are stacked or poorly coordinated. The downside is the 35-second cooldown, which makes it unreliable in extended duels. In a strict 1 versus 1 scenario, it basically loses most of its identity, but in multi-target skirmishes, it can absolutely shine. Close and Personal is one of the most straightforward melee-oriented charms in B tier. It gives you a clean 5% boost to weapon and Hakuda damage, which immediately makes your pressure more noticeable in every exchange. The 2% damage vulnerability is a small price, but it does mean you need to commit more carefully in trades. Overall, it is a very plug-and-play charm for close-range fighters who just want to hit harder without changing their entire playstyle or learning complex conditions. Factotum Spirit is a high-risk, high-reward progression charm. The 5% increased experience gain can speed up farming significantly, but the 30% increased experience loss on death makes every mistake feel expensive. This creates a very clear identity for the charm. It is only for confident players who are farming efficiently and avoiding unnecessary deaths. If you are consistently surviving, it pays off over time, but if you are dying often, it quickly becomes a setback instead of a boost. Frostwalker is a hybrid control charm that blends ranged pressure with melee payoff, landing a strong Kido hit to trigger the Frost state, and then converting it into a freezing basic attack creates a very strong setup potential. The freeze effect can completely swing a fight if you land it at the right moment, but the 25-second cooldown and the requirement to actually follow up correctly mean it is not effortless value. It is strongest in the hands of players who can consistently chain range damage into melee follow-ups. Frugal is not a combat charm at all, but more of a safety net for your wallet. Losing 80% less cash on death in player encounters can make risky situations much less punishing, especially when you are learning PvP or roaming dangerous areas. However, the fact that you also do not gain cash from players means you are giving up potential rewards in exchange for safety. It is a pure reduced punishment tool rather than something that helps you win fights. Indomitable Spirit is a very skill-dependent sustain charm that directly ties your health to your performance in clashes. Winning a clash gives you a small heal, while losing one damages you, which makes every interaction more meaningful. If you are confident in your timing and consistently winning exchanges, it turns into a nice sustain engine. But if your clash game is inconsistent, it can actually make fights more punishing and highlight mistakes even more. Lizard's Spirit is a simple emergency healing charm with a long cooldown. Dropping below 50% health triggers a 7.5% heal, which can save you from being finished off in tight situations. The problem is the 9-minute cooldown, which makes it unreliable in repeated fights or long sessions. It is best thought of as a single get out of trouble once button rather than something you can depend on regularly. Mysterious Stranger. Her adds a light RNG based bonus to ranged Kido damage builds. The 8% chance to trigger assistance is not something you can rely on, but it effectively acts as a passive bonus damage over time. Since it has 0 weight cost, it fits easily into builds that already focus on ranged Kido play. It is not a core power piece, but it is free value if your build naturally aligns with it. Mysterious Stranger. Him works in the same way, but for physical melee builds instead of ranged Kido. It is another low impact, low commitment charm that occasionally gives you a small advantage in combat through random assistance. It will not change how you fight or win engagements on its own, but it is still worth considering if you have spare charm space and want passive extra value in melee focused builds. Perfect Flash is a very explosive opener charm that rewards catching opponents off guard. Landing a melee basic or critical attack out of combat or against a full health target, dealing 2.5 times damage can completely decide a fight before it even begins. The downside is that it only really matters at the start of engagements, since once both players are actively fighting, its value drops significantly. It is strongest in ambush scenarios and aggressive initiations. Range Warrior is a classic damage trade-off charm for Kido or range-focused builds. The 6% increase in range damage is very noticeable in poke-heavy playstyles, but the 3% increased damage taken means you are more punishable if enemies close the gap. This charm strongly encourages a hit and run style where you rely on spacing and damage advantage rather than tanking hits. Relentless Hunter is a pure invasion control charm that completely changes how your presence affects other players. Preventing extraction while you are alive as an invader means targets cannot easily escape once you arrive, and instantly combat tagging mission players adds even more pressure. It is extremely strong for players who enjoy forcing fights and disrupting objectives, but it also pushes you into a very aggressive PvP-focused playstyle. Side Character is a dedicated PvE farming charm that boosts your damage against NPCs by 7.5%, making grinding significantly faster. The trade-off is taking 4% more damage from players, which means you become noticeably weaker in PvP situations. It is ideal when you are focusing on leveling, farming, or clearing PvE content efficiently, but it should be swapped out if you expect real player fights. Silent Shadows is not about raw power, but about visibility control. Reducing your aura visibility by 60% makes it easier to avoid detection, set up ambushes, or simply stay unnoticed while moving through the world. However, once combat starts, it provides no direct advantage, so its value depends heavily on your ability to use stealth and positioning before fights begin. Superiority Complex is a high-skill punish charm built around blade catching. Successfully blade catching an opponent triggers a mock effect that boosts your gain and temporarily weakens your opponent by reducing their action points and increasing posture damage taken. The payoff is very strong, but only if you consistently land blade catches, meaning it rewards mechanical mastery rather than passive value. Surgeon's Spirit is a healing-focused charm that amplifies all incoming healing by 30%, making it extremely strong if your build already has reliable healing sources. However, it removes HP packs from player knockdowns, which changes how you sustain yourself in combat. It is best suited for structured builds that do not rely on random sustain from kills and instead use consistent healing mechanics. Swarm adds a small but annoying pressure element to critical hits by spawning a friendly dragonfly hollow on impact. While the summon is not massively powerful on its own, it forces your opponent to split attention, which can create openings for follow-up attacks. It is a charm that adds chaos rather than raw stats, and that chaos can sometimes be exactly what you need. Tools of the Trade is a technical weapon mastery charm that improves how safely you can interact with heavy attacks. Making heavy attacks never read and still granting riposte potential changes the risk-reward balance of your weapon play, especially on weapons that rely on heavy attack mind games. It is not universally strong for every weapon, but in the right setup, it significantly improves your control in close combat. Wraith's Spirit is a defensive reaction charm designed to save you from burst damage chains. Getting hit by 3 different attacks in a short time triggers a brief invincibility window, which can completely reset a losing situation. However, the 5% increased damage taken from melee attacks is a meaningful downside, especially in close-range fights. It is a clutch survival tool, but it also encourages opponents to pressure you harder in melee engagements. The spirit charms in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right: Adrenaline Junkie, Await the Opening, Blade Master, Blazing Spirit, Curtain Call, Haze of Death, Heavenly Restriction, Kill Confirmed, Last Man Standing, Raid Boss, Soul Snatcher, Struggler's Spirit, Ultimate Sacrifice, Undying Soul, and You're in My Range. Adrenaline Junkie is one of the most snowball-oriented A-tier charms in VV Ultimatum. The stacking output mechanic rewards constant aggression because every clean hit increases your damage potential up to a massive 110%. But it is not free value at all, since getting hit drops your output and resets pressure if you are not careful. The charm basically demands disciplined defense. You need to stay active, keep hitting, and avoid sloppy trades. If you can maintain tempo without getting clipped too often, it becomes extremely rewarding, but if your offense is inconsistent, it can quickly feel punishing. Await the Opening is a classic defensive duelist charm that turns parry skill into real kill pressure. Normally, parries are just a defensive tool, but here they directly contribute to posture breaking, which means every correct read pushes your opponent closer to losing control. The trade-off is that parries deal 50% less posture damage overall, so it is not just pure upside. Still, for players who are confident in timing and reading attacks, it transforms defense into an active win condition instead of just survival. Blade Master is a delayed damage identity charm that completely changes how you think about melee combat. Instead of dealing immediate damage with basic attacks, you apply deep gash stacks and sacrifice upfront damage almost entirely. The payoff comes later when the stacks convert into a 110% damage result. It feels weak early in exchanges, but becomes terrifying if you can stick to a target and prevent resets. This is a charm that heavily rewards commitment and punish avoidance playstyles. Blazing Spirit is a reward for defense style charm that turns parrying into offensive momentum. Every successful parry of a basic melee attack ignites your blade, granting a strong 10% damage boost, but only on a cooldown cycle. The catch is that unignited basic attacks deal slightly reduced damage, so you are encouraged to actively earn your damage rather than spam attacks. It creates a very satisfying loop where clean defense directly fuels stronger offense, making it ideal for skilled reactive players. Curtain Call is a high-risk, sustained charm that revolves around resource control. While at full Reiatsu, your basic attacks gain lifesteal, which can snowball fights if you maintain perfect resource management. However, losing passive Reiatsu regeneration is a major downside because it removes natural recovery between fights. This makes every decision around ability usage and pressure much more important. It is powerful, but only in the hands of players who can consistently maintain optimal resource flow. Haze of Death is a simple but effective PvP utility charm. Applying Cursed on critical attacks adds a strong debuff layer to your burst windows, making your crits more threatening in extended fights. The 50-second cooldown prevents it from being overbearing, but it still creates meaningful pressure when it procs. It is not flashy or complex, but it increases the overall danger of your burst sequences in a very reliable way. Heavenly Restriction is one of the most extreme build-defining charms in the entire tier list. It massively enhances physical combat stats, including scaling damage, movement speed, and even Kido defense, while also adding utility like kill confirmed on critical hits. The massive downside is absolute. You cannot use abilities at all. That completely changes how you approach combat, forcing you into pure mechanical melee gameplay. It is incredibly strong, but only if you are fully committed to a no abilities playstyle. Kill Confirmed is a brutal finisher charm that adds psychological pressure to group fights. When you knock an opponent, they are immediately executed in a way that also creates a temporary output penalty for nearby enemies. This means every kill does not just remove a player, it also weakens the enemy team's momentum for a short time. It rewards aggressive finishing and constant participation in fights, especially in chaotic group scenarios where knock conversions are frequent. Last Man Standing is a support adjacent clutch charm that activates when teammates go down nearby. Siphoning HP packs from enemies when allies are knocked can swing extended fights in your favor, but it comes with a significant drawback. All regeneration is reduced by half. This makes it situationally powerful in coordinated group fights, but noticeably weaker in solo play. It is designed for players who stay close to their team and can capitalize on teamfight chaos. Raid Boss is one of the most complex scaling charms in A tier, and it is built entirely around outnumbered combat. The more enemies around you, the stronger you become through battle fever stacks, granting both defensive and offensive scaling along with multiple bonus effects at higher thresholds. However, being near allies reduces or removes these stacks, meaning it actively rewards isolation and aggressive positioning. It turns you into a high-impact frontline threat when surrounded, but punishes safe grouped playstyles. Soul Snatcher is a precise execution tool for Kido-based builds. It triggers when you land Kido on an enemy below 11% HP, instantly applying a delayed knock effect that prevents escape. This makes finishing low health targets much more reliable and removes clutch survival opportunities from opponents. It is not a damage booster, but it significantly increases kill consistency in PvP scenarios where enemies try to disengage at low health. Struggler's Spirit is a comeback-oriented charm that rewards composure under pressure. While below 25% HP, you gain significant damage reduction, and landing 3 basic attacks under those conditions further boosts your strength with a cooldown. This creates a structured comeback window where low health situations are not just panic moments but potential turning points. It is especially effective for players who can stay calm and continue fighting instead of retreating immediately. Ultimate Sacrifice is a high-risk aura-focused power charm that trades stability for explosive potential. Once aura is activated, it becomes uncancelable, which can guarantee powerful engagements and prevent disruption. However, aura builds more slowly, meaning you need longer preparation time before you can actually benefit from it. It is a charm that rewards planning and survival because once it is online, it can decide fights, but getting there safely is the real challenge. Undying Soul is a final breath mechanic that gives you one last chance after defeat. When your health reaches 0, you are not immediately out of the fight, allowing you to attempt a final push before fully going down. It is not true survivability, but it creates clutch potential where losing players can still secure a trade or even finish an opponent. It is best for aggressive players who like high-risk, high-reward moments. Your In My Range is a matchup-specific defensive charm designed to counter gap-closing enemies. It grants strong defense against gap close abilities and empowers your next attack after being engaged, which makes it excellent against melee divers. However, it comes with a clear weakness: increased damage from long-range attacks outside close distance. This makes it situational rather than universal, but extremely valuable in the right matchups where enemies rely heavily on closing distance quickly. The spirit charms in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, A Song of Fire and Thunder and Shonen Syndrome. A Song of Fire and Thunder is basically the definition of a high-end hybrid powerhouse charm in VV Ultimatum. It scales with your action point management in a way that rewards both aggression and control, since crossing specific AP thresholds unlocks entirely different elemental effects. Your melee attacks gain Flame Infusion and extra damage above 1.25 times AP, while your Kido attacks become Thunder Infused with added stun above 1.2 times AP. On top of that, when you drop below 25% HP, both sides of your kit get dangerous bonus effects like Scorch and Electroshock, which means even when you are low, you are still a major threat. What makes this charm stand out is how it never really lets you become safe or passive. Even at low health, it pushes you into an active fighting mindset because your abilities become more dangerous when you are at risk. The design basically rewards players who can juggle resource thresholds while staying in combat pressure, instead of backing off and resetting. It turns AP management into an actual combat mechanic rather than just a background stat. It is also one of the rare charms that fully supports a dual playstyle. You are not locked into either melee or Kido identity here, because both are enhanced in different ways depending on your AP state. That flexibility makes it extremely strong in mixed builds, especially for players who naturally switch between range setup and close range finishing. In the right hands, it feels like every phase of the fight has a different version of your kit activated. Shonen Syndrome is much simpler in concept but extremely explosive in execution. It revolves around a very unique mechanic where you literally announce the move you are about to use, and that move gets upgraded by 2 levels. The cooldown between upgrades prevents abuse, so you cannot constantly boost everything, but timing becomes everything. When used correctly, it can turn an ordinary ability into a fight-defining moment. The charm is all about tempo control and psychological pressure. Because your opponent hears what is coming, they might try to react, but the upgraded version of the move can completely change the outcome of that exchange. It rewards confidence, game knowledge, and perfect timing, making it less about raw stats and more about decision-making under pressure. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.